Alright, everyone have a seat. Let's get started on today's lecture. Today we're going to be talking about hunting and gathering. Does anyone have a clue who hunter and gatherers were and where they started? Hunter and gatherers were the earliest form of humans, and they depended strictly on the land to get by and live. They used food that was provided for them, such as animals and different vegetables and fruits and nuts and berries, and they used natural shelter to get by. They were from all over the place, like Africa, Asia, Europe, Australia, North and South America, and they started in the Fertile Crescent, which we'll talk more about later on in the PowerPoint. So communities. For the most part, hunter-gatherers moved in small groups of people, since they were constantly moving from place to place. And each group had about 30 to 40 people, and it consisted of a few different families. And as far as their shelters go, they use what the land provided for them, so like caves and different natural types of thing. They were able to build stuff out of wood, small shelters, and they use animal skins. But as far as shelter goes, they didn't spend too much time in a certain area building something because they were constantly moving from place to place. It was more work for them to build something. Within a few months, they'd have to leave because the seasons are changing and animals are constantly migrating and moving. So roles of men and women. They were very different. Men hunted and fished, and they did the hard work. They built the shelters that were temporary for them to live in, and they had more of the hard work. Whereas women gathered nuts and fruits and different vegetables and different things that they can eat, and they prepared the meals as well as they protected the children and raised them and taught them different traits. And the children also helped with what the women did with collecting berries and different stuff like that. So weapons and tools. Stone was a major part. They didn't have much developed at this time, but stones were used for different cutting materials, and they also put them on the end of their spears, which were used for their bow and arrows. And they also had different knives that they could use to cut, and axes to get their firewood, as well as awls and bags. Bags were a major part for the hunters. For the men, they used those to carry around their tools with them when they went out to go get their food, and the women used it to collect their berries and nuts and different things like that. And as time went on, the development of fire was a major part. They could not only use it for heat at night to keep them warm and light to see in the dark, but a good protection from animals. It also allowed them to hunt at night so they could see where they were going, because some animals only come out during the night and hide during the day. So it allowed them to hunt new different types of animals as well as many other factors. So we just kind of talked about hunting a little bit of food. Like we said, meat and chicken and fish was what the men hunted. But along with just eating the meat of it, they also ate some organs, which might be somewhat graphic, but they ate the liver and the kidneys, and they really didn't waste much parts of the animals. They used the bones as tools as well, and the skin for clothing and different types of shelter. So it wasn't only animals weren't only used for food, but they were used for almost everything. And they ate many types of fruits and vegetables, like carrots and roots, and they also collected berries. The women collected berries like strawberries, blueberries, raspberries, and any type of nut they could find, walnut, anything like that. So hunter-gatherers were one style of life, but as time went on, they began to move to agriculture. And I don't know if any of you guys are familiar with agriculture, but agriculture began in 8000 BC to 5000 BC. It's called the Neolithic period, and it focused mainly on the domestication of plants and animals, and it allowed villages and towns to develop, and they were really able to focus in on one area instead of constantly moving and having to adapt to the weather and changes and animals migrating and plants dying, and they were able to really focus in and maintain an area and have it become more reliable for themselves. So the Fertile Crescent, and here I'll show you a picture, is right in this area here. You can see it. The Fertile Crescent was the earliest evidence of agricultural development. So with that being said, it's where mostly the agriculture was found and was started up, and the Tigris River and the Euphrates River were probably the main reason why they were there. The land was very hilly and had a lot of running water. And running water is not only one of the most important things for us to survive, but it allowed us to water our crops and do so much more for us. It also allowed for better travel, but a constant amount of water is important, especially around this area with there being so many deserts, that running water is not the easiest thing to find. And this area was good for that. With water being around, it kept the soil wet, kept the soil good for harvesting crops, and that's all what agriculture is about, is being able to maintain the land in a certain area. So again, here's a picture of the Fertile Crescent. The two rivers here, and right in between Mesopotamia. This area all in here is was very good for farming and different. And also down in this area, if they were able to get to the Mediterranean Sea where the Nile River was, this area is all very good as well. But the Fertile Crescent's right in this area, where the earliest agriculture was found. So with agriculture, I kind of mentioned the domestication of plants and animals, and that's really the main focus of this time period. With the domestication of crops, they were able to produce wheat and barley and many other things on a need basis. They had dates, grapes, apples, melons. They were allowed to have this all year long, and they were able to produce it and grow it constantly. And they didn't have to move from place to place, and they were able to just keep having it whenever they needed it and produce more of it as they needed more. It wasn't only just fruits, it was a lot of vegetables as well. So the domestication of animals, I think, was probably the most important part of agriculture. Um, Different animals included pigs, cattle, sheep, cats, and dogs, and each one played an important role in that time period. As men didn't have to go out and hunt as long, and it made it a lot easier having dogs to help sniff out the animals and being able to domesticate them. They had more of them. They were able to train them. So dogs were a major part in hunting and control the sheep as well. And sheep was good for the wool. It was able to help produce blankets and clothes to keep them warm, and also for shoe. All the skin from the animals could be used for shoes. Cattle allowed for milk as well, and like I said, all these animals were able to provide food as well, just for their meat. Um, and later on, the domestication of horses took place, which was majorly used for hunting. They were able to move across the land faster, explore new areas, catch up with animals. It helped with hunting, and it also helped with traveling. They were able to move faster and greater distances, and it allowed them to just have easier travel. They didn't have to quite carry as much themselves. They could throw more on the bag, and this goes along with the tools. They developed new bags to put on the side of the horses to carry more stuff. It also helped with trade. So communities changed. We had talked about communities with hunter-gatherers, but as we're moving into agriculture, communities changed. And with that comes positive and negative changes. So with positive changes, society grew. More families were able to stay in a certain area. More people were able to live off the same land. They were able to have new housing and buildings. New styles of houses formed. Better building material was available for them. And with them being able to stay in one spot, they were able to focus on their crops and work with each other. But negative changes as well, where settlements grew into each other, and they began to run out of space. And as they came together, it could either be a positive or negative thing based off how they interacted with each other. But mainly diseases was the major part. Smallpox, malaria, tuberculosis, and the measles were all problems that they had to deal with, as well as with animals being so close with them, and since they were constantly on the land sharing area, the animals are dirty, and a lot of sicknesses came from that as well. And with that, with agriculture, gender roles change as well. So men still went out and hunted, and they still fished, but now they were forced to farm, and maybe forced is not the best word, but they started to farm, and they were able to produce crops for their whole family and the community for them to live off of. And they also built homes and had different jobs within their area. and women still gathered fruits and vegetables and helped with the farming when it came time to harvest them, and they still raised and taught the children everything they needed. But they also had a harder job maintaining the homes now, because it wasn't just a small, cave to clean up. It was more than that. It was maintaining the homes and doing small repairs and stuff like that. So at the end of this discussion that I would do, I'd like to finish with questions and discussion for my kids, and I just have them fill out this on a blank sheet of paper, maybe. I want them to just gather the differences between hunter-gatherers and agriculture, figure out the differences between them. So I'd have them focus in on food and communities. So the major thing I'd want them to pick up from this lecture is that food changed, that they were able to produce their own food. They were able to grow their own food instead of having to constantly go out and look for it. And communities would change based off the fact that they could have buildings and be able to stay in one area and grow there, and as well as the community would grow in size. And then which do you think is better and why? There's no right or wrong answer. I just want them to critically think about what I have talked about and just get their feedback and think from their point of view.